Staff Sergeant James Chen stared at the two tall, silver-skinned aliens fumbling with the food synthesizer in the military base's common area. Their long fingers pressed random buttons, and their large, pearl-colored eyes blinked in confusion at the machine's angry beeping. Even from across the room, he could hear their stomachs growling. The Zaxian twins stood out among the few other aliens in the room. Most Zaxians on the base carried themselves with almost annoying pride, but these two looked lost. Their standard-issue military uniforms hung loose on their frames, suggesting they hadn't eaten properly in days. Probably too proud to ask for help, James muttered to himself, remembering the briefing about Zaxian culture. Their species was known for their strict social rules and hatred of appearing weak, especially in front of other species. The taller twin accidentally activated the cleaning cycle, making the machine spray sanitizer everywhere. Both aliens jumped back, their silver skin flushing a pale blue in embarrassment. James couldn't watch anymore. He walked to his personal locker, pulled out his emergency stash of instant ramen, and grabbed his portable water heater. Breaking protocol to feed aliens might get him in trouble, but he couldn't let anyone go hungry on his watch. "Excuse me," he said, approaching them carefully. Both Zaxians turned, standing straighter, trying to look dignified despite their obvious hunger. "Would you like to try some human food?" The twins exchanged looks, their antennae twitching in what James had learned was a sign of interest. The shorter one spoke first, her voice musical despite her attempt to sound formal. "We wouldn't want to impose on your resources, Human Surgeon Chen." James smiled, noting they'd read his name badge. "It's not an imposition. Actually, you'd be doing me a favor. My mother keeps sending me too many noodles, and they're about to expire." It was a small lie, but one that might help them accept without losing face. The taller twin's antenna perked up. "Expire? We wouldn't want to waste resources." Her sister nodded quickly in agreement. "I'm Lyra," said the taller one. "This is my sister Kiera. We are the first female Zaxians selected for the exchange program." James plugged in his water heater. "It's an honor to meet you both. This is called instant ramen. It's a traditional human military survival food." Another small stretch of the truth, but it made the food sound more official. As the water heated, more aliens in the common area pretended not to watch. A human sharing food with Zaxians was unprecedented. James opened the packages, releasing the smell of artificial chicken flavoring into the air. Both twins' antennae went completely straight, a sign of intense interest. "The preparation ritual is important," James said seriously, making the simple act of adding hot water sound ceremonial. "The noodles must steep for exactly 3 minutes to reach optimal consistency." Kiera leaned forward, studying the floating noodles with scientific intensity. "The geometry of these food strands is fascinating. They appear to be changing structure in the heated dihydrogen monoxide." James held back a chuckle. Trust a Zaxian to make instant ramen sound complicated. He pulled out 3 pairs of chopsticks, demonstrating how to hold them. The twins copied his grip with careful precision. When the timer beeped, James served the noodles into 3 bowls. The twins watched him take the first bite before trying themselves. Their eyes widened at the taste, and their skin rippled with colors, a Zaxian sign of pleasure they couldn't hide. "This is..." La Era started. "Incredible," Kiera finished. They ate with increasing enthusiasm, their usual Zaxian dignity forgotten in the joy of finally having a filling meal. James pretended not to notice when they lifted their bowls to drink the broth, breaking at least 3 Zaxian table manners rules. As they finished, both twins looked at him with new respect. "Thank you, Human Surgeon Chen," they said in unison. "Just call me James," he replied, gathering the empty bowls. "Same time tomorrow." Their antennae wiggled in happiness before they could stop themselves. "That would be acceptable," La Ara said formally, but her color-changing skin told a different story. James watched them leave, walking a bit straighter now. Sometimes, he thought, The best diplomacy happened over the simplest meals. The next evening, James arrived early to set up his little cooking station in the common area. He wasn't surprised to find Lara and Kiera already waiting, trying to look casual despite their obvious excitement. Their antennae kept twitching every time they glanced at his bag of supplies. "Today," James announced, pulling out 3 different ramen packets, "we're going to try new flavors." He arranged them on the table. "Spicy beef, shrimp, or vegetable. Your choice." The twins studied the packets like they were examining important military documents. Their large eyes blinked rapidly as they read the ingredients lists. "Are all humans this?" Kiera paused, searching for the right word. "Generous with their food knowledge." James smiled as he heated the water. "Food bringing people together is a big part of human culture. My grandmother always said a shared meal is worth 1,000 diplomatic meetings." "Fascinating," Lara said, choosing the spicy beef flavor. "In Zaxian culture, eating is a very private matter. We have strict rules about who can eat with whom." Her silver skin darkened slightly. "That's partly why we've been having trouble here. Most of our approved food items are incompatible with the base's synthesizers, and the approved items that do work taste like processed space dust." Kiera added, then looked embarrassed at her outburst. As James prepared their meals, other aliens in the common area watched with growing interest. A young Zaxian male stood nearby, obviously hungry but too proud to ask. James pretended to look worried about his extra ramen packet. "Oh no, I accidentally prepared too much. Would anyone like the extra bowl?" he asked loudly. The young Zaxian practically jumped forward. "I would be willing to assist you in preventing food waste, human sergeant." Soon, all 4 of them sat together, despite it breaking several Zaxian social rules about dining arrangements. James taught them how to twirl the noodles on their chopsticks, a skill that the mathematically minded Zaxians turned into a geometry problem. The optimal noodle-to-chopstick ratio appears to be 3.14 rotations, Kiera declared seriously, making James choke on his broth from holding back laughter. Lara watched the human's easy smile with curiosity. "In our military, mealtimes are silent and efficient, but this is pleasant." "Different isn't always bad," James said gently. "Sometimes it's just different." The twins shared a meaningful look. "We have a confession," Kiera said quietly. "We're not just the first females in the exchange program. We're also the first from our generation to leave our breeding colony." James kept his expression neutral, though his curiosity piqued. "Breeding colony?" Lara nodded. "Our species has strict genetic planning. Twins like us are rare and considered." She struggled with the word. "Defective. We weren't supposed to join the military, but we proved ourselves top of our class." "Nothing defective about being unique," James said firmly, serving them seconds without asking. The grateful look in their eyes told him he'd said the right thing. As they ate, the twins gradually shared more about their lives. They'd never tasted food from other worlds before coming to the base. They'd never eaten with males present or outside their assigned eating chambers. Every bite of ramen was an act of rebellion against thousands of years of tradition. When they finished, both twins stood with perfect military precision, but their usual formality cracked as they smiled. "Same time tomorrow, James," Lara asked hopefully. "We could share some Zaxian tea in return," Kiera added, "if that would be acceptable." James gathered the empty bowls, grinning. "I'd like that. Food for food. That's a fair trade." As they left, James noticed their antennae were relaxed for the first time since he'd met them. Sometimes, he thought, the biggest changes started with the smallest things, like sharing a simple bowl of noodles. Word spread quickly through the base about the human who shared his food with aliens. James noticed more Zaxians lingering near his usual spot in the common area, their antennae twitching with barely hidden interest. He started bringing extra ramen. Today, Lara and Kiera arrived with their promised Zaxian tea, a shimmering blue liquid in crystal containers. 5 other young Zaxians followed them at a careful distance, trying to look like they weren't hoping for an invitation. The tea must be prepared precisely, Laera explained, measuring the liquid with scientific accuracy. Too much can overwhelm non-Zaxian nervous systems. James watched the blue tea swirl in his cup. Like how humans have to be careful with caffeine. Similar, Kiera nodded. Though our tea affects the mind differently, it helps us share thoughts more clearly. She paused. We thought, perhaps you would like to understand our situation better. James took a careful sip. The liquid tingled on his tongue, and suddenly the twins' emotions felt clearer, like seeing through clean glass. Their worry, hope, and fear mixed together in his mind. Our breeding programs, Laera began, her voice low. They're failing. Each generation, fewer eggs hatch successfully. Kiera continued, the elders say it's because some of us are defective, but we've studied the real data. It's because our genetic pool is too limited. The hovering Zaxians moved closer, drawn by the conversation. One of them, a young male, spoke up. May I join this discussion? His antenna quivered with nervousness. James smiled and pulled out his Raymond stash. Only if you're willing to trade some noodles for your thoughts. Soon, 8 bowls of ramen and cups of tea covered the table. The Zaxians shared their stories between bites. They were all considered irregular by their society's strict standards. Twins, those with slight genetic variations, ones who asked too many questions. In the old times, an older Zaxian female explained, accepting a second helping of noodles. Our species welcomed differences. We traveled, traded, evolved. Then the Great Plague came, and the elders decided tight control was the only way to survive. But now that control is killing us slowly, Laera said, we need change. The blue tea made their words carry extra weight in James's mind. He saw flashes of their memories. Sterile breeding chambers, strict genetic testing, the sadness of watching too many eggs fail to hatch. Humans faced similar challenges, James shared, feeling the tea loosen his thoughts. Not with breeding programs, but with ideas about purity and control. We learned that diversity makes us stronger. How did humans change their minds? Kiera asked, her large eyes intense. Slowly, through small moments like this, different groups sharing food, sharing stories, realizing we're not so different after all. The young male Zaxian looked thoughtful. Perhaps that's what we need. Not a revolution, but evolution. Small changes, like eggs hatching. James noticed the twins exchange a meaningful look. They'd been doing that more often lately, as if sharing private thoughts about something important. James, Laera said carefully, would you be willing to meet with us privately tomorrow? There's something important we need to discuss. The tea in his system let him sense their nervousness and hope. Whatever they wanted to talk about, it was serious. Of course, he agreed. Same time, different place. They nodded, relief coloring their emotions bright and clear through the tea's effect. As the group broke up for the evening, James watched the Zaxians leave together, talking quietly among themselves. What had started as simple food sharing had grown into something bigger. He could feel it in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Tomorrow's conversation with the twins would change things. He was sure of it. He just didn't know how much. James never made it to his private meeting with the twins. Early that morning, a high-ranking Zaxian official arrived at the base unannounced. Commander Zarel, head of genetic purity, swept through the common area with 4 guards, his silver skin tinted with angry red patterns. Who is this human who corrupts our people? Zarel demanded, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. His eyes locked onto James, who was setting up his usual cooking station. You are the one who feeds our younglings your primitive sustenance. James stood straight, military training kicking in. Sir, I was simply sharing my culture's food with interested parties. Sharing. Zarel spat the word like it was poison. You corrupt our carefully maintained dietary purity. Our species has survived for 10,000 years through strict control of all consumption, and you destroy it with. He picked up a ramen packet, processed wheat and artificial flavoring. La'ara and Kiira burst into the room, their antennae rigid with alarm. Commander Zoril, La'ara stepped forward. The human has done nothing wrong. Silence. Zoril's skin pulsed with angry colors. You twins are already a genetic anomaly. Now you spread disorder among others. He waved at the group of young Zaxians gathering nearby. Look at them, meeting in mixed groups, eating foreign substances, questioning our ways. Kiira moved to stand beside her sister. Perhaps our ways need questioning. Our hatching rates drop every cycle. Our genetic programs are failing. We've studied the data. You've studied nothing. Zoril interrupted. You're barely out of your egg chambers. What could you know of genetic purity? James watched the twins stand straighter, their fear giving way to determination. La'ara pulled out a data crystal. We know enough. These are the real hatching statistics for the past 100 cycles, not the adjusted numbers the Council releases. The young Zaxians moved closer, their antennae focused on the crystal. Zoril's guards shifted uncomfortably. Our species is dying, Kiira continued. Not from impurity, but from too much purity. We're breeding ourselves into extinction. Zoril's skin turned almost white with rage. Guards, confiscate that crystal. These two will return to the breeding colonies for re-education. No, James stepped between the guards and the twins. They're here under the Interspecies Exchange Treaty. You can't remove them without human approval. You dare interfere in Zaxian matters. Zoril's antenna quivered with fury. When you threaten my friends in a joint species facility, yes, I dare. James kept his voice calm but firm. And I don't think I'm the only one who objects. Around them, more Zaxians had gathered. Young ones, old ones, even some of Zoril's own guards. All watching, all with their antennae pointed forward. The Zaxian gesture of support. The older female from yesterday's tea session stepped forward. Commander, perhaps we should examine their data. If there's even a chance they're right. This is outrageous. Zoril looked around, seeing his authority crumbling. This will become an interstellar incident. I'll report this to both councils. Good, La'ara said firmly. Report it. Let everyone see the data. Let them know that while our elders cling to failing traditions, other species thrive through diversity and change. Zoril stormed out, taking his increasingly uncertain guards with him. The room burst into excited chatter, Zaxians clustering around the twins and their crystal. James started to step back, to give them space. But La'ara caught his arm. Stay, please. This started because you were kind enough to share your food. Now we need your help sharing something bigger. Much bigger, Kiira added, her eyes intense. We still need to have that private talk with you, James. Now more than ever. Looking at their determined faces, James nodded. Whatever they had planned, whatever storm was coming, he would stand with them. After all, he thought, the biggest changes in history often started with the smallest acts of kindness, even something as simple as sharing a meal. After the confrontation with Commander Zoril, James met the twins in a quiet corner of the base's botanical garden. The artificial sunlight cast strange shadows through the alien plants, making the twins' silver skin shimmer. We've been studying human DNA, La'ara began without preamble. Her antennae were straight, a sign of complete seriousness. Ever since we first arrived at the base, Kiira continued, pulling out another data crystal. At first, we were just curious. Humans have such incredible genetic diversity. James sat on a bench, feeling this conversation was bigger than he'd expected. Okay, what did you find? The twins shared one of their meaningful looks. La'ara activated the crystal, projecting complex genetic patterns in the air between them. Human DNA is remarkable, La'ara explained. Your species can adapt to almost anything. Changes that would kill other species make humans stronger. And here's the important part. Kiera pointed to where two DNA strands twisted together in the projection. Human DNA is surprisingly compatible with Zaxian genetic structures. James's eyes widened as he understood what they were suggesting. Are you saying, "We want to have children with you, James?" Lara said directly. Her skin flushed blue with embarrassment, but she kept her voice steady. Not just for ourselves, but for our species. Our scientists never looked for compatibility with other species, Kiera added quickly. They were too focused on purity. But we've run thousands of simulations. Human genetic diversity could save our species. James sat in stunned silence. The twins waited, their antennae twitching nervously. "This is a lot to process," he finally said. "You're not just asking for me to be a donor, are you? This would be a real family." "We've watched how humans raise their young," Lara said softly. "How they let children grow and change and become their own people. We want that. Not the sterile breeding programs of our past." "But it would change everything," James pointed out. "Your society, your traditions. They're already changing," Kiera insisted. "Every day, more young Zaxians question the old ways. We're ready for something new." James stood and paced, thinking hard. What about the children? Would they be accepted? Protected? "We've thought about that." Lara pulled up more projections. "The simulations show the offspring would be viable, healthy. They'd have the best of both species, Zaxian telepathic abilities, human adaptability. And we'd protect them with our lives," Kiera added firmly. James looked at the twins, really looked at them. He saw their courage, their determination, their hope. He remembered how they'd stood up to Zarl, how they'd fought for change. "You really want this, a family with me?" he asked softly. Both twins stepped closer. "We've never been more certain," they said in unison. "When we first met you," Lara explained, "we were hungry for food. Now we're hungry for change, for a future that isn't bound by ancient fears. And you showed us that kindness doesn't make you weak," Kiera added. "That sharing makes everyone stronger." James took a deep breath. "You know this will cause an uproar, bigger than some shared meals." The twins smiled, a very human gesture they'd picked up from him. "Good," Lara said. "Our people need a good shaking up." Besides, Kiera's antenna curled in amusement. How much trouble could it be? "You already faced down the head of genetic purity for us." James couldn't help laughing. "True, though I think that was just the warm-up." He looked at both of them seriously. "If we do this, we do it right. No hiding, no shame. Any children we have will be proud of both their human and Zaxian heritage." The twins' skin rippled with joy colors. "Is that a yes?" they asked hopefully. James nodded. "It's a yes, though I have one condition." "Anything?" they said together. "Our kids have to learn to use chopsticks properly. None of this 3.14 rotations business." Their laughter echoed through the garden, a sound of hope and change and new beginnings. The news spread faster than a quantum transmission. Within days, every screen on the base flashed with the same headlines. Human Zaxian hybrid program proposed, and genetic purity in question. James and the twins found themselves at the center of a political storm. Commander Zarl had kept his word about making it an interstellar incident. The base's main conference room was packed with representatives from both species. Humans sat on one side, Zaxians on the other, with James and the twins in the middle. "This is unprecedented," Zarl thundered, his skin flashing angry patterns. 10,000 years of careful genetic management, and you want to throw it away for love. He said the last word like it was dirty. Admiral Chen, James's commanding officer and coincidentally his aunt, stood up. "Love has nothing to do with this discussion. The scientific data shows clear benefits to genetic diversity. Data collected illegally by untrained youth." Zorel pointed accusingly at the twins. Lara stood, her voice steady. Test our findings then. Run your own studies. The truth won't change. Our species is dying, and human DNA could save us. In the crowd, younger Zaxians nodded in agreement. Many had been part of the noodle-sharing gatherings, where they'd first tasted freedom from strict traditions. And what of the children? A concerned human scientist asked. Have you considered their well-being? Kiera activated their data crystal again, showing the genetic simulations. The offspring would be healthy, with traits from both species. They would have human adaptability and Zaxian telepathic abilities. Abominations, Zarl spat. James finally stood up, his patience gone. No, they would be children. Love children. Not numbers in your breeding program or marks on your genetic purity charts. Just children, with two cultures to learn from and infinite possibilities ahead of them. A young Zaxian military officer stepped forward. I've served with humans for 3 cycles now. Their diversity makes them stronger. Their differences give them new ideas, new solutions. While we stay locked in our old ways, they grow, adapt, thrive. More voices joined in, mostly younger Zaxians tired of rigid traditions. Some older ones too, who had watched too many eggs fail to hatch, who had seen their species slowly declining. Order. Admiral Chen called out as the debate grew heated. This isn't just about one human and 2 Zaxians anymore. This is about the future of both our species. Exactly. Zarel seized on her words. The future of our species. We cannot allow it to be corrupted. Corrupted or saved. La Era challenged. She turned to address the whole room. Look at human history. Every time they encountered new ideas, new cultures, new challenges, they grew stronger. They didn't hide behind walls of tradition. They adapted. Kiera joined her sister. We can learn from them. Or we can continue to watch our numbers dwindle, protecting our precious purity until there's no one left to protect it. The room erupted in discussion. Young Zaxians arguing with elders, humans debating among themselves. James caught sight of the older female Zaxian who had first supported them, now speaking passionately to a group of council members. Admiral Chen called for a recess. As the crowd filed out, she pulled James aside. You know they're sending death threats, right? Both humans and Zaxians who oppose this. James nodded. We expected that. We're ready. The twins joined them, their antennae showing worry but determination. We won't back down, Laera said firmly. Not now, Kiera agreed. Not ever. Admiral Chen looked at the 3 of them, her nephew, and the 2 aliens who wanted to start a family with him. Her expression softened. Then we'll protect you. All of you. She straightened her uniform. After all, family is family, no matter what species they are. As they left the conference room, James heard the continuing arguments echoing through the halls. Change never came easily, he thought. But it came all the same, one small step at a time. First, it was sharing noodles. Now, it was sharing genes. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. They would face it together. The medical bay of the Joint Species Base had never seen such a crowd. Behind its sealed doors, human and Zaxian scientists worked together, running test after test on the genetic samples. Outside, James and the twins waited with a growing group of supporters. The final results are ready, Dr. Sarah Martinez announced, emerging from the lab. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. We've confirmed everything Laera and Kiera's research suggested. Human and Zaxian DNA are remarkably compatible. The twins' antennae quivered with joy. Around them, young Zaxians broke into happy color patterns, their skin flickering like aurora lights. Dr. Martinez displayed the test results on the large screen. The hybrid embryos show incredible stability. They're combining the best traits of both species, human adaptability and Zaxian psychic abilities. More importantly, they're completely viable. Impossible. Commander Zorel pushed through the crowd. He'd been watching from the back, his skin dark with anger. You must have manipulated the data. The tests were overseen by both human and Zaxian scientists. Admiral Chen stepped forward, including 3 members of your own genetic council. The results are real. Laera touched the screen showing the hybrid DNA patterns. Look at the strength in these combinations. Our children won't just survive, they'll thrive. Our species will die. Zarel protested. Our species is already dying, Kiera countered. But now we have hope. She turned to the crowd. Who else has lost eggs? Who else has watched their carefully planned genetic matches fail? Hands raised throughout the room. Even some of Zarel's supporters looked down, their skin showing patterns of grief. This isn't just about us anymore, James said quietly. This is about giving your species a future. A real future, not just survival. The older female Zaxian who had supported them from the start stepped forward. I lost all my eggs in the last breeding cycle. The genetic counselor said I was defective. She raised her head proudly. But perhaps it was the system that was defective, not us. More Zaxians began sharing their stories. Failed hatchings, lost siblings, genetic imperfections that led to exile from breeding programs. Years of pain hidden behind traditions of purity. Zarel's antenna drooped as he listened. For the first time, his rigid posture softened. I too have lost eggs, he admitted quietly. Many eggs, but our traditions can change. Admiral Chen said gently. They must change, or they become chains instead of guides. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. There's more. The hybrid genetics show potential resistance to the Great Plague that nearly destroyed your species, the very thing you were trying to breed against. Human DNA naturally fights it. The room went silent. The Great Plague, the disaster that had started all the genetic purity rules thousands of years ago. Zarel stared at the screen, his scientific training warring with his beliefs. Finally, his antenna drooped in surrender. Perhaps it is time for change. The twins moved to James's side, their hands finding his. We'll need help, Laera said to everyone. This won't be easy. We're creating something entirely new. You'll have it, Admiral Chen promised. Both our species will support you. After all, this could be the beginning of something amazing. Kiera smiled. It already is amazing. Look around. James looked. Humans and Zaxians stood mixed together, no longer separated by species. Young Zaxians displayed their emotions openly, their skin patterns bright and unashamed. Older ones spoke quietly of hope and change. Commander Zorel, James called out. The older Zaxian turned. Would you like to join us for dinner? We're having ramen. Zorel's antenna twitched in surprise. Then, slowly, his skin showed a pattern none of them had seen before. Acceptance. I would be honored, he said carefully. Perhaps it's time I learned what all the excitement is about. As they left the medical bay together, James squeezed the twins' hands. Their revolution had succeeded, not through force or violence, but through understanding, science, and a simple bowl of noodles. 1 year later, the base's medical bay was crowded again, but for a very different reason. 4 eggs sat in a special incubator, their shells shimmering with both silver Zaxian patterns and unique golden swirls never seen before. James stood between Laera and Kiera, all 3 barely breathing as they watched the first egg move. Tiny cracks appeared on its surface. It's happening, Dr. Martinez whispered, monitoring the vital signs. All readings are perfect. The assembled crowd of humans and Zaxians pressed closer. Commander Zarel, now one of their strongest supporters, stood at the front, his antenna twitching with excitement. Look, Kiera pointed as a small fist punched through the shell. The hand was silver, like a Zaxian's, but had 5 fingers like a human's. Laera squeezed James's hand as more cracks appeared. Our baby is strong, she said proudly. The egg split open, and a tiny cry filled the room. The baby girl was beautiful, silver-skinned like a Zaxian, but with human eyes. Tiny antennae already twitched on her head, and her skin showed swirling patterns of joy. "She's perfect," James whispered, tears in his eyes. Before anyone could speak, the second egg began to crack. Then the third, and finally the fourth. Within an hour, 4 healthy hybrid babies lay in their parents' arms, 2 girls and 2 boys. "Have you chosen names?" Admiral Chen asked, wiping her own tears away. "Chen Liera for the first girl," Laera said softly. "After both our families." "James Kiero for the first boy," Kiera added. "The second boy is Thomas Zorl." Commander Zorl's antenna shot straight up in surprise. You would honor me this way." "You helped make this possible," James said. "Once you opened your mind to change, others followed." "And the second girl?" Dr. Martinez asked, checking each baby's vital signs. "Hope," both twins said together. "Because that's what she represents for everyone." The babies were already showing signs of both species' traits. When they cried, nearby computers flickered. Zaxian telepathic abilities. Yet their vital signs showed human adaptability, adjusting quickly to the world outside their eggs. "They're already stronger than pure Zaxian babies," Dr. Martinez noted. "And their genetic diversity. It's amazing. The human DNA has strengthened the Zaxian traits instead of weakening them." Commander Zorl nodded. "We've already had 50 other Zaxian couples apply for the hybrid program. And our scientists have discovered that even introducing small amounts of human DNA into pure Zaxian embryos increases survival rates. A whole new generation," Admiral Chen smiled, "born without the burden of genetic purity rules." The babies were passed around carefully, welcomed by both species. Young Zaxians proudly showed their emotional color patterns, no longer hiding their feelings. Older ones watched with hope, seeing a future they'd thought impossible. "Are you still doing the noodle nights?" Zorl asked James suddenly. James grinned. "Every evening. Though we've added some Zaxian dishes too." "Why?" "I thought perhaps the children should know where their story began, how a simple meal changed everything." "Speaking of meals," Laera said, taking back baby Chen Liora, "we prepared something special today." Kivera pulled out familiar packets of instant ramen, making everyone laugh. The baby's first celebration should include what brought us all together. As they shared the meal, humans and Zaxians mixed freely, passing babies and noodles with equal joy. The children were already falling asleep, their tiny antennae twitching as they dreamed. "You know," James said to his wives as they watched their family, both old and new, "I never thought sharing my emergency ramen stash would lead to all this." The twins smiled, their skin showing patterns of love and happiness. "The best changes often come from the smallest beginnings," Laera said. "And the best families come from love, not rules," Kiera added. Above them, the base's artificial sky shimmered with stars. Somewhere out there, more changes were beginning, more barriers falling. But right here, in this room full of warmth and hope, 4 tiny children slept peacefully, living proof that sometimes the universe's greatest recipes came from mixing the unexpected.